All right. So let's review. Let's look at your theory first. Page 24. Okay. And this was the transposition that we talked about. So everything's up basically a whole step. Because if we're going from F minor to G minor, everything moves up. This is written exactly as it is up here, which is kind of nice that you get to actually write it in once yourself before you have to move it up. Now, right here, I would make sure you put just a ledger line right there so it looks like D, because what you're doing is, you know, there's no way all these ADA keys can fit on the staff, so they have to make some lines in here and then above and below to make it correct. All right, then this one, if we're just going a whole step above, instead of that being on an E, that would just be a D, so it would look like this.
Oh, probably because this one over here.
Because yes, I think that threw you off. And then this one, we're going up. So instead of that being on A flat, yeah, B flat, and then that C, D. So everything else is correct. That looks terrific. Now next week, actually in your lesson, we're going to do some practice with transposition and sight reading. So that will be 25. All right, let's move on to your Hannon. Let's do that next. So what speed were you comfortable with on this at home where you didn't feel like your left hand was not keeping up? Last week we set it for 80. What do you think as far as the speed of the metronome?
I think I could go 80.
Okay, all right.
If I focus enough.
Yeah, and the thing is, you know, your hand is kind of fluid as you play, and so if you just keep locked like this, you're just not going to be able to move like you need to. Okay. So we're going to talk a lot about that today, actually. Almost there at that tempo. So how about for the first half of this week, you keep it at 80. Then let's try bumping to 84. All right, and remember what I said about, you know, if you watch my hand when I'm doing this, yes, my hand is still curved. Yes, I'm playing on my fingertips, but I'm also moving. Doing that. Okay, let's go to your scale. Now we're going to do the A minor scale that goes with your arabesque. And let's try that. If we need the metronome, I can always put it with, but let's try it first without. Pedaled progression. try it again and see if you can get a little bigger tone with a little more forearm right there.
Like this?
Yeah, like when you play, drop your weight to get a bigger tone. Yeah.
Oh, okay. There's a little bit better left.
Nice. Okay, now for the arpeggio, let's do that once, hand separate, and then we'll put it together. Okay, so when you're doing that, try to relax your wrist. Floating motion. All right, let's try the right hand. That's excellent. Good. Good. Now let's do it together. So I would continue to work on, we're going to work on actually that until we're done with arabesque. So I would continue to work on the arpeggio, hands separately and then together. And just remember, just relax. And you might even want to staccato that, especially in the left hand as you're practicing. All right, so how about I hear Happy Birthday in the key of C? Now something fun at the end that you might want to do, you know, we talked about the one chord in the key of C. One cool thing when you're ending is you could take the C chord and you could do an arpeggio. Happy birthday to you, to finish it. And that would be kind of interesting. You could also go lower in the bass, so you were, so you had a big finish. Yeah, and as long as you're staying within that one chord, there's a lot of different things you could do. You could even take this and make it block at the end. So those are just some ideas for you as you're working on that. Now, let's go to the arabesque. Okay, now, when you do this, we're just going to think of this like performance mode. So even if you make a mistake, just get through it as well as you can. Then we'll go back together and we'll look at the areas we need to look at. In fact, there's so many pieces that he wrote that I just think are awesome because they're not super long to learn, and they're just beautiful. They have really pretty melody lines. Now, I loved what you did here with the accent and the sforzando. I liked how the melody was up front and you could really hear that. That was a nice crescendo. It was nice and light. Now, I think this section, I could hear a little more variation in the crescendo and decrescendo. Like, and I would work on just that left hand coordination with those little run patterns. You're not as comfortable with the left hand as you are the right hand yet, but you will be. And it's always that way with most musicians that I've met. The left hand usually needs a little more time to learn the pattern. So I would do a lot of work on that just by itself. All right, you're doing a good job. You just need to be a little more confident with it. Now, so a little more variety in here on the section B, you know, where we start da 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 da, where I can hear a bit more of the crescendo and decrescendo. And then here, this rallentando, which we talked about last week, I wouldn't start that rallentando until you get about right here. And I wouldn't make, they're almost sounding like the distance between each of those notes is equal. It should be a gradual slowdown. So instead of what you were doing, I would do maybe, okay?
Because I thought it was like rit.
It is, but a ritardando means that a rallentando and a ritardando, those terms are interchangeable, but it's a gradual slowing down. Not all of a sudden we distance between each of those notes. It's gradually get slower, all right, rather than all of a sudden we just change the tempo. Okay, so you're gonna slower, 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 and then kind of wait and drag that out, and then take a breath, and then you're back. All right, and I really liked that ending. That was a very strong ending. Let's take section B. Let's work a little bit on the dynamic right in here with the crescendo and the decrescendo. Good. Now make sure at the end of those phrases that you taper them. And then how about starting an octave higher? There we go. Oh, that's just going to be lovely. Yes, good job. Okay, so that's really what I have to say about this. Continue working on it. It's coming along terrific. And I'll listen to that for next week, and then we'll talk about how to polish it, and then we'll be all finished with that piece. Okay?
I have a question, but this part over here, it'll go to this one too, right? So this one will be louder than over here, and this one gonna go.
You know, this to me is more so on the right hand. That's going to shape that more. Each one of these I would, because those always need to be underneath the melody. So that's how I would play those. Just like you're doing these. I would think of each of these patterns as the same. I would think about that crescendo and that decrescendo. See how that's peaking right there? That's when I would be the loudest in the right hand. All right? Okay, let's hear the Wild Horseman. See how that's coming. Okay, so going. And we'll go back, okay? I think you're right here. So this hand's going to be on a G major chord there. And then your right hand's going to be on B. So you want to put 4. You want to lower it 1 note to B. Yeah. Good. Now, I think this transition from the right hand going into the left hand is what's hard. All right. Then your left hand, you just need to keep working it by itself with the metronome. It's coming along. All right. But this is a transition that's difficult because you're having to regroup. You're switching the melody line from the right hand to the left hand. And it's a piece that goes pretty fast, so that's hard to do. And this section, that's just perfect. I think it's awesome. And this will be just as good as this with just a little more time. So let's try going. Can you start here and try transitioning?
You start when this hit over there.
So you get a rest, an eighth rest. So about like that. That was it, though. That was a good transition. That's exactly right. Good. And then there's another transition where it switches back. So right here, that would be, I'm sorry, I should have told you that. So right here, that'll be another spot to look at though. So that's how quick it goes from one section to the next. Okay, so I would keep working at that, and I think by next week you'll have that. That's really sounding nice. All right, now is that going to be enough for you to work on?
I think we can add in the march one by Tchaikovsky.
The Soldier's March, or
I think it's
the Shostakovich. Okay, all right.
Shostakovich.
So how far were we in this?
I think
piece?
you try to make all notes. I think.
Okay, so we'll go back to that and we'll finish that for next time. Okay. The next week we should be able to pick some new things out of that book. I love that book. You guys are going to get such good use out of that. The other thing I wanted to tell you, page turns are such a pain for musicians. I've been at concerts where I've seen music fall in on people because it just, anyway, but FedEx has, there's a FedEx in the Walmart in Liberty. There's also one in Gladstone. They have a thing where they can cut off the spine of the book and they can make it so that it's a spiral. It's so much easier. That would be a really good book to do that with because there's so many pieces in that book. You know?
FedEx in Walmart, you said?
Well, there's one in Walmart in Liberty. The Liberty Walmart. I don't know if you guys go to the Liberty Walmart, but
no.
But there's also a FedEx on North Oak Traffic Way. And that's who did mine. But I noticed when I was in Walmart the other day that they had a FedEx in there. You know, so it's like probably $15, but it's well worth it to not worry about your music falling in on you. And you'd be playing out of that book for quite a while because that's just perfect for where you guys are at right now. Okay? All right, so that's it for you. Great job, and I'll see you next week.
Me too.